Right now, somewhere in a wealthy country, there is a young person who woke up this morning with no work, no school, and no plan to look for either. And they aren't alone. Except it's not just one person today. 262 million young people worldwide are living exactly like this. If you bring this up at a family dinner, the reaction is pretty predictable. You'll hear that this generation is lazy, too soft, and needs to get off their phones and get a job. But economists actually have a specific name for this massive demographic. They are called NEETs, not in employment, education, or training. This chart shows the official youth unemployment rate, but that official measure only counts people who are actively sending out applications, which means it completely misses the rest of them. For every young person counted in official unemployment statistics, there are roughly 3 more who aren't counted at all. If you look closer at that massive shadow group, the data points to specific circumstances rather than a lack of motivation. The numbers heavily skew toward young people dealing with work-limiting health conditions, unpaid caregivers looking after children or sick parents, and those who have faced so many rejections they simply stop trying. Progress on bringing young people into the labor market has stalled. In many of the world's most advanced economies, the number of young adults sitting outside the system is now higher than it was a decade ago, even as other economic indicators suggest things should be improving. For most of the 20th century, the modern economy offered a reasonably reliable first rung on the ladder. You didn't need credentials or connections, you just needed to show up to an entry-level job that paid a living wage while you built a work history. That rung included factory work and routine physical labor. These roles taught a young worker how to take direction and be part of the system. It also included administration roles, basic processing, and data entry, and there were robust opportunities in retail management and customer service. None of these were glamorous, but for an 18-year-old, they were the way in. Those jobs are disappearing. Physical automation wiped out the manufacturing jobs first. Now AI is doing the exact same thing to entry-level white-collar work. Between late 2022 and mid-2025, employment for new workers in the fields most exposed to AI actively fell. The modern gig economy absorbed much of what was left. That offers flexible work, but it comes with zero progression and absolutely no training, and a complete shift of financial risk away from the employer and directly onto the worker. The traditional entry points that allowed previous generations to build a work history and launch a career have vanished. In their place is a labor market that increasingly expects workers to arrive with their own training and their own stability. The traditional advice for avoiding a shrinking job market is to take on debt, go to university, and get a degree. But the math behind that advice is failing. Tuition costs have exploded, leaving the average U.S. student borrower with nearly $40,000 in federal debt, while the share of graduates actually landing roles that require a degree has plummeted to a decade low. Even if a young person finds an opportunity, getting to it presents another hurdle. The few excellent jobs that remain tend to tightly cluster in very specific, highly expensive technology and financial hubs. 3 in 5 young renters in the United States are now classified as rent-burdened, spending over a third of their income on housing alone. In tech hubs like San Francisco, extreme rents erase the financial benefits of securing those highly sought-after jobs. This is a global pattern. In Sydney, the income required to comfortably rent an apartment has jumped beyond what the average young worker earns. Packing up and moving for work is mathematically impossible for many entry-level earners. Navigating an unstable job market, carrying serious debt, and facing housing you can't afford causes chronic stress. That stress deteriorates mental health, which makes maintaining studies or showing up to work even harder, creating a downward spiral. The growing number of young adults staying in their childhood bedrooms aren't doing so out of a lack of ambition. They are running the numbers and realizing the established paths to independence are financially rigged against them. To see what happens when a country ignores this structural collapse for an entire generation, we can look at Japan. When Japan's asset price bubble burst in the 1990s, the corporate economy permanently closed its entry points. Young people who expected to walk into stable employment found themselves cycling through low-paying, part-time work instead. Many became completely discouraged, withdrew into their bedrooms, and never re-entered society. Decades later, Japan is facing the 80-50 problem, a generation of discouraged youth who are now in their 50s, entirely reliant on parents in their 80s. Over 1 million people in Japan are currently trapped in this state. And similar patterns of long-term youth withdrawal are now exhibiting as early economic warning signs across the West. That is 2 generations of people, one through spending and one through working, effectively removed from the system. Leaving a generation stranded creates a massive permanent deadweight that drags down a nation's entire economy. Because these are structural problems, they can be fixed with structural solutions, and several European countries already have working blueprints. The Netherlands runs a dual education system that treats non-university vocational training as a highly respected direct pipeline to employment. Students split their time between the classroom and real workplaces, graduating with employer relationships already in place. Sweden makes childcare affordable enough that young caregivers aren't forced out of the workforce, keeping their demographic of disengaged youth well below the European average. Denmark uses a model called flexicurity, which combines flexible corporate hiring with strong safety nets and aggressive retraining programs. Losing an entry-level job there isn't a trap. The system actively helps you step into the next one. Fixing the conditions for young workers is a macroeconomic necessity. These are the people expected to drive growth, pay taxes, and support the social systems the rest of us will rely on as we age.